We are going to be talking about how this is the last chance you really have to protect yourself from the economic chaos that is coming. Now, this isn't necessarily something that is coming so quickly that you have to do it by tomorrow, but if you do not move yourself into the appropriate mindset going into the future, you will end up being on the bottom side of the wedge, and you will find yourself in a much depressing situation, as the rich will continue to get richer and the poor will essentially get poorer in relation to the rich. Now, with that being said, it's really not like you're in a poor country here in the United States when you think about how it is that some people in the world really are living poor. Here in the United States, we actually have quite a few luxuries, and that is the point of the problem, is the luxurious experiences that people move into, and that separates the rich from the poor. Now, to truly understand the problem, you really have to understand that there is economic forces that are underlying that go much deeper than the politics, that go much deeper than the economic conditions based around social conditions or even environmental for that matter. There's a lot of economic forces that are underlying that have occurred many times throughout history. And one of those economic forces that I really like to focus in on is the Cantillon effect. And when you think about the Cantillon effect and you think about the things that we are experiencing right now, everything starts to really line up and become much clearer and starts to make sense, because you realize that this has to do with the new money that pours into the system and separates the rich from the poor. This separation from the rich and the poor also has the occurrence of manufacturing leaving the nation. It ends up being in a state in which that the country that had a powerful manufacturing state that grew rich off of it finds itself ever increasingly in a position of trying to maintain that position, and it's getting ever harder to keep a hold of that grip. Now, to understand what's really taking place right now, you really have to take it back and just think about what was being said inside of the Cantillon essay. Now, if you want a copy of the Cantillon essay, there is a link to it at the Mises Institute. If you go to, like, just type on Cantillon essay on economic theory, and you can find it for free at the Mises Institute, and you can read the whole thing for yourself. Doesn't cost you anything. Now, in that essay, there are 3 chapters. The chapters on the increase and decrease of money to the state, I believe, is chapters 6, 7, and 8 of part 2 of that essay. And those chapters are very telling of situations such as what we are experiencing when you find that the new money that comes into the system, the people who have access to that new money will start to spend that new money at face value. As that new money starts to enter the system, the people who are getting that money into the system will also begin to enjoy that new money by spending it on items that they had not normally purchased. But since they now have the new money, they will also enjoy the experience of having that new money. This is what begins to throw the supply-demand imbalances out, and the people at the end of the line who have last access to that money, they're going to suffer the most, as they will not be able to afford the standard of living that they were working for, as their increase in wages hasn't happened, but yet the prices have moved up. This is where we start to find that foreign production will start to come in and compete with the higher prices that are now the domestic manufacturers are after excuse me, after the domestic suppliers have increased their prices, the foreign manufacturers will increase or start to increase the competition, and you'll find ever increasing amounts of foreign competition moving in. If there's ever increasing amounts of new money pouring into the system, this is where the problem really starts to lie. Because, see, in the Cantillon essay, there was a moment there in which that it was a gold standard or use of currency that was being supplied by a silver mine. When the silver mine runs out and the new money runs out, everybody's falling into poverty and misery. Well, here in the United States, something else has taken place, because when it came time to replenishing the world with that gold and set a new equilibrium for manufacturing, we decided that we were going to hold on to the gold, and we started issuing out U.S. Treasury debt. So now the new money continued to increase, and the new money kept pouring in, driving out ever increasing amounts of domestic manufacturing and driving ever increasing amounts of foreign production. Now, we're sitting in a situation in which that we are asking ourselves, how is it that we're going to bring this manufacturing back? And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen without pain and misery. Because every time through history, every time that has taken place in which that you had a rise in manufacturing and you became a manufacturing powerhouse and you had new money coming into the system, at some point you started moving into luxuries, and that was the base of the problem. If it wasn't for the move into luxuries, none of this would have been taking place. See, it was the fact that the people wanted to work hard, enjoy their hard work, start buying better houses, better cars, better clothing, started eating 2 ribeyes instead of 1. You started finding that the increase in consumption started throwing supply-demand imbalances, ever increasing the prices, and allowed foreign production to move its way in, just like it did hundreds of times before, just like Cantillon wrote about it hundreds of years ago. There's no reason to believe that it's going to be any different going into the future, and the evidence of it right now is taking place every time you see a tariff, the threat of tariff, the idea of tariffs. This is the signs of what it is that's taking place when the foreign manufacturing is overwhelming your domestic manufacturers. But here in the United States, we don't produce items. We produce a consumer. There's a bigger difference here. See, we actually have a consuming nation that depends on selling items to each other. And if we don't manufacture those items, what items are we going to sell to each other? See, we buy foreign production and sell it to each other. We buy the foreign production because it's the foreign production that is essentially buying the U.S. Treasury debt. When those nations are selling items to the United States, they are essentially putting their money in U.S. Treasuries as the U.S. Treasury becomes the world reserve currency, or becomes used as a world reserve currency. See, the dollar is used, but a lot of times what you'll find that these nations who are doing deals in dollars are actually using U.S. Treasuries, because at least with U.S. Treasuries, you gain a little bit of interest. So U.S. Treasury debt is what's used as a currency for doing world trade, along with dollars, along with BRICS nations' sovereign currencies, along with other things that are taking place out there that are not necessarily U.S. dollar based. But for the most part, they're using dollars. And this is what the United States is supplying the world. See, we don't try to manufacture things to try and bring in new money. That wouldn't be ridiculous. We would have to manufacture so much stuff to sustain our way of life. It would be incredible. We can't do that. We have to rely on the world using their resources, their ingenuity, their time, their energy, everything that they got to send us their stuff, and we send them a paper promise. I don't know why anybody would want that to end. I mean, when you think about it and you say it that way, do you really want that to end? I mean, we get all their stuff, all their production, all their hard work, and we don't really have to send them anything. But this is the reason why the United States is not going to go back to being a manufacturing powerhouse. It ain't going to happen because we don't produce enough stuff to sustain our way of life. We could cut back on our way of life. Like, we can cut back on the standard living, and that would be the removing of luxuries, which was the original problem to begin with. And if we think about it in that fashion, then yeah, we probably could. I mean, you think about it, real hard. It's just like, I'm never going to buy another new car, another new TV, another new piece of item of clothing. I'm going to repair everything, and if it does break, I'm just going to live without it, and I'm going to do this for generations. Literally upon generations, because it's probably going to take multiple generations doing this. And if you do this consistently enough and you take all the money that you did happen to move away from debt, because you got to pay off your debt first. So once you move away from the debt, you would have to then start deploying that money into capital savings and investments that would then have a return, but never move into luxury. No. The moment you start moving into a luxurious experience, it's all over. It's done. That's it. Separation between the rich and the poor, foreign production, and it's all over. You're just minded. It's just a matter of time. That's it. It's just a matter of time. Understanding it in this fashion then gives you the ability to now do something about it. And this is where I find that a lot of people say, why don't you tell people what it is that you can do to help figure out what it is that's going on inside of this economy so that we can all have a better way of life? And I'm trying to tell you that it's not possible. The only thing you can do is do it for yourself. And once you figure it out that you have to do this for yourself, and you just think about the Cantillon effect and how it is that you try to live a life that's different from what it is that everybody else is doing that's creating that situation, I guarantee you, you will find yourself moving to the other side of the wedge. Everybody is moving into luxurious experience because they feel that they need theirs in order to be happy with their life and say, hey, man, I'm not going to be some broke ass living like, there's nothing going on in my world and I'm going to be bored as hell. I'm actually going to enjoy my life. Those are the people who are literally creating the problems that we are now experiencing today because they moved into a luxurious experience because they feel that they deserve it. Well, go for it. And we'll see the problems that come from it because that is human nature to move into the luxurious experience. I do not blame people for doing it. But when people say, hey, man, what do we do to fix the problems? It's like, stop doing that. Stop buying new cars. Stop buying new clothes. Stop buying new stuff. Stop buying all the crap, move all your money into paying off debt, and then start moving all the money that is not paying off debt once you're done paying off debt, and you start deploying that into capital investments, and you do that for generations upon generations. That's the only way this can go down. If it goes any other way, you're going to find that the wedge is going to drive deeper, no matter what you do. Because if you can find any evidence of it not happening, like where the wedge doesn't get any deeper from the things that they do and the actions that they take every time they print up the money and they hand it to the poor, it just goes right to the rich anyway. Right? So why keep trying to smash your head against the wall trying to figure out how it is that you can fix this system? It doesn't fix like that. You are the only thing that you are responsible for. There's no way that you're going to get anybody else to start thinking like you can. The only thing you can do is to say, okay, man, I know where my position is in life, and I know what it is that I need to do to get out of debt and start deploying my money into capital investments and not buy into luxurious experiences at all, in any way, shape, or form. Most difficult thing in the world to do because we're humans. We want to do that. Hell, I want to do it. I wanted to go get tacos today. My wife says, no, I'm already making dinner. Right? It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday tacos. There's some really good tacos down at the D. You wouldn't believe it. They're like $2.50. If you're ever in Astoria on a Tuesday, go to the Desdemona and get their tacos. They are absolutely incredible. They're the best in town, right? No joke. All right. Let's read some comments. How far are we into this? I blasted that for 12 minutes. You guys enjoy that? But it's the truth of the matter. It's just like, if you think about it in that sense, just simple. Right? You as an individual can deal with this whole situation just simply by not moving into a luxurious experience. And I know that is hard for people to understand. Like literally, if you are going to buy anything, must be made in America. Otherwise, just don't give a shit about buying it. That's it. Right? And that is the only way that you could ever possibly move into a direction in which that would work. But even still, it's going to be a painful experience for most people, as you're going to find that things in this economy are going to slow down dramatically, as we are not a manufacturing state. We are a retail state that sells stuff to each other. And if we don't have stuff to sell to each other, that's going to be really difficult to operate in. Right? That's all there is to it. Now, understanding it is fine. Right? But just also knowing that it's probably not going to go any other direction than the direction that it has been going. And that is, at some point, there's going to be a disbursement of more money that goes into the system that is going to find its way, separating itself from the rich from the poor and its way to the top again and again and again. Right? And they're figuring out ways in which that they can do it. You think about, like, now, there was times that I remember hearing economists talk about how negative interest rates will never happen. Right? If you talk to an economist 15, 20 years ago, they would have told you that negative interest rates was almost an impossible thing that you would probably not experience. That has been proven wrong, right? So you think about some of the things that they are thinking about and strategizing on and trying to figure out how it is that they are going to move into and around laws, like the central bank digital currency aspect of things, like the stable coins to use in place of a central bank digital currency, because they know that a stable coin can be regulated by the government, and the Federal Reserve can then just continue using their monetary policy as they always have. And then the stable coin itself, which is then being backed by the Federal Reserve's liabilities and the U.S. Treasury short-term debt. And this is essentially like a cash position in which that the stable coins are now being used inside of commerce, inside of everything that the government is willing to use it to pay taxes. Now the Federal Reserve can deploy their monetary policy straight into the dollar, which is then going into the stable coin, which is then into the economy, and they don't have to do anything with it. They have talked about this. I don't know if it's going to happen, but if it does happen, I know that they talked about it in the past, and it does seem like it's pretty logical to me that if they don't want to mess with their monetary policy and how it is that their charter is used inside of this economy, inside of the way that Congress has set them up, they don't have to change anything about the way they do it. They can let the government deal with the regulation of stablecoins, and they can just operate the way they normally do. All right, boy, I'm really going off today. Okay. Money is just the outcome. First is faith in knowing there is more, and we all face repercussions on our actions. No? All right. When's the giveaway? I thought you were giving some silver away. That's a good one. That would be actually pretty cool. I should get some UE coins and give them away. All right, go outside the system and buy gold. See, Grant, I think that's a really good idea. Now, understanding that that may be the position in which that you want to take, but not everybody's going to have the same economy. Now, I am in a position in which that I do try to position myself when I can into precious metals when I feel that it is appropriate. And I tell you, that is the only way that you are going to be able to separate yourself from the third-party claim. Everything else is a third-party claim. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't care. Stocks, bonds, definitely third-party claims. Even property is reliant upon a third party, the government, in protection of personal property rights and stuff like that. That's very difficult to then say, hey, government, no, you stay in charge to make sure that it's at least enough to protect my property, right? Or you can stand there with the gun and try and protect it yourself, one of the two. Silver and gold is a much easier way to look at something that is useful, proven, transport, like, all this stuff, right? And it's not like in the system in really any way if you have possession of it, right? It's the one thing that's out of the system. And so, yeah, definitely, have a silver and gold position. Where do they think they are going to go when they get kicked out of their 109? 1009? Country, America. All right. Hey, cool. $2 super chat. Let's check this out. Jonathan, thank you so much for the $2. Will multi-generation households become common? Oh, I would only assume. This whole idea that there's going to be a housing market crash, if there is, I don't think the people who are wishing upon it, they better have like a lot of money. Like a lot of money in cash, because the only thing that would actually drive a housing market down in this point would be people who would not be willing to take a cash position at this point. Like, I'm trying to think about this. Like, there's more cash buyers in the market now than there really has been since like the 80s or something like that. And so and it's really probably because there's so few transactions really happening out there. But that, when you really think about like that many cash buyers, the moment that the opportunity becomes better, when it comes to like, say, better interest rates or something of that nature, then like the herd moves in, man. So it's going to take like some kind of crisis situation in which that financing is an issue, right? So financing can't happen. That means you have to be in a cash position, which is already quite elevated, meaning that like how like like how low can it really go if already a cash position is elevated? You see where I'm kind of getting at? Like if cash purchases were very low, then I would think, okay, there's probably a lot of room that they could fall due to the lack of being able to finance a home before you'd able to find like the cash power. But if the cash power is already elevated and you start dropping the finance, like the cash power is like already quite elevated, it would probably be there to support it. The cheaper the houses go, the more cash power you would find. Right? You see where I'm kind of getting at? It's like I don't know where it is that people actually look to see where the housing market crash is going to be from like the great financial crisis point of view, because that was due to people who had taken out a lot of loans that were never going to pay them back, and this is not the situation that we're facing today. Now, on the last scale of it, people losing their jobs, right? Everybody loses their job, the economy goes to hell, and all these people get kicked out of their house because they can't afford them anymore. But still, in this sense, right, you are going to have to figure out some way to have enough money to compete against people who are in a cash position, right? It's not that. This is where I kind of laugh at the whole thing, because it was just like all of a sudden I'm thinking the rich are going to get themselves a whole bunch of property the moment that this happens. All right, it's gonna find a dramatic, if this happens, like you'd almost want to pray to God that it doesn't, right? Because that's where really like the people who are wealthy now will be like, oh man, this is like the last step to just taking the property away from everybody. It'll be like the last straw, right? So I don't know, like the people who are like crash expectation elevated kind of people or whatever, I think like, man, I don't know. It's like probably not going to look too good for you as far as like, unless you are like in a cash position, like you're ready to do it, like you have the money to do it now and you're just going to wait for that crash to happen, then like, okay, yeah, because you're rich, right? I mean, you're already rich. Yeah, that's exactly the position in which that rich people would take. So, uh, oh man, I can hardly see. I gotta get my glasses. Is there something here? Yeah, there's something right there. Ah, perfect. Okay. Jonathan, $2. Should co-sign with family how it worked pre-FHA? I mean, co-signing with the family, I think is probably not a bad idea. Now, me personally, like I would only assume that at some point mom is probably going to be spending time with me. Maybe dad will spend time with me. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they want to spend time with, my sister. But that's kind of generally how families kind of end up going. Now, being in one of the ridiculously stupid, expensive places in the country to live, um, it's probably going to be pretty hard on my kids too. So unless they move away from the area, they're probably going to end up having to, live in this house as well. It's a big house, so it's 4-bedroom house, so that's pretty lucky for me. So I'm already planning or expecting that it's either going to be one side or the other, that, or maybe even both, that I will have family, multifamily or multi-generational family living with me. So I'm like just kind of planning it to be that way. And I'm assuming that a lot of other people will be as well, if they're not already doing it, which, I mean, if you got kids and then you just don't ever expect them to leave, and, I mean, I do expect them to leave at some point, but you see where I'm getting at is like, this isn't the place that you would really want to get a good start on your own at 18, like I did, where I moved out of the house the day I graduated into an apartment and was on my own the entire time. And it was not easy. And that was like 1995. A really long time ago. All right, oops, let's get these things. Thank you guys for the super chats. I really appreciate that support. You guys are awesome. All right, economy gonna be run on Trump coins. I'll take, I don't know about that. Take just enough and enjoy the free things like beautiful sunsets and fresh air. Mandy, I can't find anything else in life that I really would want anyway. Like I would much rather just rent stuff. That way you don't have to maintain it or deal with it. I want a view, I want music, and I want a ribeye. And that is the only thing I want. Everything else would just be an extra. I mean, it's just like after that, I'm just not sure what it is that I would really want. And because it's nothing like that special. Things are enjoyable. I want to go do things. Like I like traveling. I like, going to see things and all those wonderful things that I get to go do and see. I don't think about them costing money. Like I don't think about how much it is to have a Camaro in my life. I could have one right now if I wanted, and I don't really care to spend the money on a Camaro when I think there's so many other things that I would rather buy. Or like at this point right now, I got, this getting out of debt because I was thought I would be out of debt by this point from my goal of last year. And so, like, just knocking that out here in the next month or two still doesn't deny me the ability to buy a Camaro. Like, I could get one anyway. And the point being is that I don't want one. I do want one. What I want is to drive one on the weekends when it's awesome and it's sunny and it's beautiful, and I don't have to worry about maintaining the vehicle, and I get to drop it off at somebody else and say, hey, man, thank you for letting me ride that thing around for the weekend. Because just having one isn't that important to me. I got this badass old Suburban right here that I'm going to turn it into a camping mobile. We got all kinds of plans for it. It's four-wheel drive. It's really awesome. I can't wait to take it out on the beach. I got all kinds of ideas on what I'm going to do with it going into the future. Like that I want. All right. You know what I'm saying? And that thing was like nothing. It was just like, it ain't important to nobody. Yeah. So it's just like everybody's wants and needs are different, and being able to move away from luxurious experiences to say, hey, I don't really need fancy things to prove to anybody else what it is to be cool out there. Like I understand there's some people that they're just in a position in which that they just can't be driving a jalopy around. I get that, right? But even still, I mean, I see it all the time. Why, like people who are buying into new cars, making new car payments, they really can't afford them, and then they complain about how expensive everything is. And I'm like, no kidding, right? If I mean, you're buying luxurious experiences. That's all there is to it. And if you didn't buy luxurious experiences, then that's the other stuff wouldn't seem so expensive. But I mean, concert tickets are expensive. Well, I mean, car payment every single month and full coverage insurance is expensive. All right. Maybe you're dumb enough to not also have long-term stored food and seeds, but I'm not. Gold is where it's at. Well, I mean, here's the thing about it is like you could find yourself in a position in which here's actually a good one. I don't know if he's still watching. There was a guy who sent me an email one time and he was really like kind of upset with me. And he said that and he gave me like kind of his life story, like in a quick email, and it was actually pretty well written, for how brief it was. He described quite a bit of it, and so he talked about growing up in Cuba, and he talked about how like at one point when they got a lot of Russian aid, like there was help coming to them, they had like all this wonderful stuff going on, right? And he said that like he made jokes about how they ended up with these muffins, like these abundance of muffins. They were given all these muffins, and the kids had like all these muffins, and there were so many of them. They were like, "Here, kids, eat this," and the kids were like, screw this," and they were throwing each other. They were having like these muffin wars, like throwing these muffins at each other, throwing muffin wars. And then he talked about like all of a sudden things went wrong, right? And like as a kid, he didn't quite know what wasn't getting what was happening, but essentially the aid was cut off, right? There's nothing happening. They're not getting anything going in. And he said that his grandparents had gold. And when the food supplies got really, really, really tight, they gave up that gold really quickly for the food, and they didn't really get what they were expecting out of it. That is something to think about, right? He said he remembered that as a kid that they gave up that gold pretty quickly to get some food, and it wasn't really like they didn't get like they didn't protect themselves much. Like it wasn't like this massive protecting of their savings or anything else like that. It was essentially they gave it up for the necessity because they were all going to go hungry if they didn't have it. And so now I think about that. It was just like the gold is secondary to the be able to. Gold is secondary to the ability to acquire food, because what it comes down to is wealth is three things: food, conveniences, and pleasures of life. So when we think about gold, that is not really a sign of wealth, right? It's a sign of the ability to have either acquired wealth and stored it in there in something that you can maybe transfer over to wealth, but it's not necessarily wealth itself, because wealth is food, conveniences, and pleasures of life. If you use the gold as a convenience, you can consider it wealth. But if gold is not going to work as a convenience for you, much like it didn't work for my friend in Cuba who was suffering from hunger, and they had no other choice but to give up this gold, and they didn't get nearly what they were expecting for it in order to get the food, then that wealth was really evaporated quite quickly. Knowing how to can food is probably one of the best things that you could ever possibly do in order to protect yourself. Like, if you had one thing, anything at all that you could do right now that would literally cost you less than $50, is you can learn to can some jam or jelly or something of that nature, right? Go get some carrots and learn to can carrots, right? You could get all the equipment you need. Like, you could probably get incredibly outfitted to everything that you would ever need to fill up a case of quart jars for less than $100. And watch some YouTube videos on it, read some articles on it, and learn to can food. And that would be one of the best skills that you could ever possibly have, because once you have canned that food, you don't have to use any more energy. For years, you can store that food. You kill an elk, you know how much food that is? That's an insane amount of food. Like, for an individual, that is like a lot. Even for a family, that's a lot of food. And you only have a day or two with that meat without preserving it before it's gone, or it's going to be gone real quick. Now, if you can can it, and you don't need electricity, you can learn to can over fire. It's possible, even pressure cooking. And if you learn to do that, then you can preserve that elk, that giant animal, in a way that you could store it for years to come if you needed to. That skill is unlike anything else out there. You can freeze dry, do all that, but you need electricity for almost everything else out there. Now, that's a skill my wife has. You can bring her 100 pounds of anything, and she will have it canned up by the end of the day. No problem. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter. If it's something that can be canned, she will can it and can it. And after that, everything is kind of secondary to that. Learn that skill, and then after that, start learning other stuff. But if you can can food in a way that you can store a lot, like do a lot, process a lot of food, and it's no problem for you, then yeah, you'll go into times in which that people who don't know how to do that will give you food. They will say, here, I will give you half of everything I have here. I got 100 pounds of something, and they'll bring it to you, and they'll be like, I'll give you half if you fill it up and if you put it in jars and give it back to me. Give me half back in jars. All you have to do is come up with the jars and lids and rings and the time to process it, and you can have other people bringing you food if you knew that skill. Because a lot of people don't know how to do it, and it's not that hard to do, right? I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know how to do it, but I help her out sometimes. Oh, let's go check out that super chat. We got, who is this? JR Kusik. Thank you for the $20, man. I'm fortunate enough to have the option to gain residency citizenship outside the U.S. Looking at Uruguay, consider Switzerland and Latium. Do you believe some countries that are less reliant on USD will be more stable? No. No. I think the United States dollar is going to be probably in the position of the world reserve currency for quite some time to come. In fact, it would have to completely fail in order for it to not be the world reserve currency. And that's all there really is to it. Like, you're not going to find anything that can compete against the dollar. you can force the situation. You can like force force nations to try and do it and use something else. But there's really nothing else out there that's going to even be able to compete against the dollar, because the dollar is the only thing that's in supply enough to actually provide enough of enough currency to actually perform the desired amount of transactions the world is looking to do. Like, I don't know if I stated that exactly right for people to grasp, but there's a lot of transactions that want to be done, and there's only a certain amount of currency out there and able to do it. And if you're going to borrow money, generally people want to get paid in dollars, which actually increases the demand for dollars. So all these transactions that want to be done around the world that is done in dollars is going to be so massive to try and replace that nobody is actually going to be able to fill its shoes. And then if it was a failure of the dollar itself, then you would actually find a failure of transactions, depressionary effects, because there's no nation that is going to rise significantly enough in their debt issuance and currency creation in order to compete against what it is that the dollar is doing, or even provide what it is that the dollar is doing without sending themselves into an unsustainable debt path like the United States has. Like, it's not possible. That's just it. Like, I mean, I can understand it if there's like complete chaos and utter collapse of the currencies, and then we're starting from like, dust and rubble. Okay, all bets be off. Let's talk about it then, right? But until that happens, the rise of the BRICS nations and all this other stuff is just like, okay, go ahead, waste your time thinking about that stuff. It is not going to happen, right? It can't. It just simply can't happen. If you want to see something, okay, if you want to read something that is really good, go read. I don't have it out here with me. It's Dollar Funding Stresses in China. It's a 20-page document given by the Federal Reserve. It's probably like, I don't know, 3-4 years old or something like that. But in that document, it is so good because it talks about the dollar-denominated debt that exists around the world that was created by entities that do not have anything to do with the government, not Chinese government, not the United States government, not anything, right? It has to do with individual peoples and corporations who are creating dollar-denominated debt that are then using that dollar-denominated debt to do transactions around the world. And that paper talks about how bad of an issue it is in China when that happens, because the dollar funding in China becomes so great that it starts to destroy the nation in how strong the dollar gets and how they are not able to continue to operate in their financial markets as the dollar portion of their credit rating balance sheets starts to go bad. It starts dragging the credit rating of the entire nation down. I know this is complicated stuff. I don't even know why I dive into it like that. I know it's hard to wrap your head around, guys. Like, if you follow people like Jeff Snyder and Brent Johnson, you would totally get it. Those guys talk about it so much and so in depth all the time that they really could they could deliver the message to you in a much easier way that you would actually retain it. But just knowing how deep it gets, it's just like, there's no way. There's literally no way. You know? And the whole idea of like this tariffs and on again, off again, and like nobody knowing, I can't wait to see what happens tomorrow, right? Because nothing, everybody's going to get up and drink coffee and go to work just like they did the day before. But here's the thing, like, when these tariffs kick in, if they do not implement them into the full scale of what is the retaliatory, like all the tariffs that are on us, people tell me, oh, they talk to me about ways of like, hey man, they've been hitting us with all these like fees and tariffs and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, I know they try to get the dollars out of the United States. Like, to me, that makes sense, right? Get the dollars out of the United States, as many dollars out of the United States as possible. It's called Triffin's dilemma. Right? If you're going to be the custodian of the world reserve currency, you got to get your dollars out there to the world. How do you get the dollars out there to the world unless you buy their stuff? If you're suffering in trade deficit and the people are going ever deeper in the debt because they're consumer debtors and they just totally gorge on it every time you give them a handful of that debt, they just sit there and buy Chinese stuff. And all of a sudden you realize that, man, if we continue down that path, it's going to really be ugly for them. How do we get the dollars out of the United States? Well, maybe if we threaten them with tariffs and they do retaliatory tariffs and then we don't tariff them back, they can just take it from us even more. I don't know how many people look at it this way. They probably don't. They have this whole thing that they've made up inside of inside of this idea in politics that, he's playing some sort of 3D chess in order to try and, return America back to being something great again and bringing manufacturing back like that's some possible thing. Like it's delusional thinking. It's not going to happen. Right? I mean, you can bring some manufacturing back. Don't get me wrong. You can bring it back. Right? But you're not going to bring it back in a way that says, hey, man, we can have a standard of living that is maintained the way we have it today. There's no way. We're buying stuff from people who sleep on the ground. You're not going to be able to compete against that. I don't care what you do. You're not going to be able to compete against that. You're going to have to lower your standard of living to compete against something like that if you think that you're going to bring manufacturing back. It's not going to happen, right? The only thing that's going to happen is the debt issuance is going to grow more and they're going to have more separation between the rich and the poor because what they have to do here in the United States is produce a consumer. We buy the production of a foreign nation. That's it. And if we have a difficult time doing that, we got to figure out a way to get that money out there to the world. And this is really why a lot of people probably see the MMT thing coming. Not that I want to see it, but I'm guessing that they're going to have to figure out a way to produce the consumer. And if the consumer isn't going out there and borrowing debt to do it, then what are they going to do? They're probably going to force it upon you. Just force feed money right into you. They say, here, UBI, man, just go out there and buy that foreign production. Yeah. I don't think people realize it, that we make our money by selling our debt to foreign entities. That's how we live. This is how we have the standard of living. And then when we think about bringing manufacturing back, you have to say, okay, if I'm going to bring manufacturing back, got to have something that I can produce to sell out there to the world. Because if I'm going to sell something out there to the world, then I get to have my new money come in. Otherwise, I have to lower my standard of living, and that's all there is to it. So to think about it in that fashion, it was just like if you're really begging to have manufacturing come back, you're actually begging to have a lesser standard of living too. Because it's the only way. It's the only two that are going to go hand in hand. I'm down for it. Let's do it, man. Hell, I lived almost in the gutter one time. I was very close to like not having anything. In fact, I don't really feel like I have much now. I have a bunch of debt that I have to pay, and I got an old Suburban that I really like. After that, and you could throw all my material possessions inside of that Suburban and people would be like, dude, I don't want none of that stuff. I'll give you, $30 for it all. I don't have anything, right? And so when I think about it, it's just like I actually live the life that I preach. I'm trying to tell people, it's just like, what can we do to fix it? I'm trying to tell them, this is what I'm doing. I'm trying to fix like what it is that I can do because I can't tell people what to do. Right? I can tell you, man, what the problem is. The problem is people have moved into luxury. They moved into luxury, started buying foreign production. Foreign production has kicked out domestic manufacturers. The only way you're going to ever continue on with the system in which that you're not suffering in pain and misery is for them to continue to do debt issuance, which means that we have new money coming into the system, which means that the separation between the rich and the poor get ever worse, and there's nothing you can do to stop that. Right? Chai. Let's do it, man. Whatever plan you have, I'm down for it. Let's do it, man. You want to go back to a gold standard? You want to use Bitcoin? You want to do all that other stuff? Let's do it, man. You institute a gold standard into the United States. What you're going to do is buy up a bunch of foreign production with your gold. You're going to send your gold right out to the United States, and you're going to find yourself in pain and misery almost instantaneously. You won't have but a month or two, and all the gold would be gone because you live such a high standard of living. That's it. It would be vanish out of here. All right. And so what are you going to do? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. And so I keep telling people that just live the life in which that you want to see out there. If you did that, you would understand that the move into luxurious experiences is the problem, and try to stay away from them luxurious experiences as much as you can. Believe me, I want the new car. Like, I want that stuff. I want everything. I want all the wonderful things in the world that has to offer out there. And believe me, I think it's a beautiful thing to actually have some of those wonderful things in my life and to enjoy them and all that other stuff. But I also know it's the exact reason that causes the pain and suffering and misery of the separation between the rich and the poor. It's the same thing. Right? If people, it's hard. It's hard to look at life and say pleasurable experiences or painful experiences. It's the same thing. Think about it. Think about anything that you have ever done that was a pleasurable experience in your life as some sort of reverse action of pain that came with it. You went deeper into debt, you got bloated and fat, you were hungover, you got in a fight with your friends, you whatever. Every pleasurable experience had a resulting experience of pain that came with it. Man, what's with me today, man? I'm just going off. All right, so wow, 646 people. You guys are really enjoying this one. My goodness. All right, 195 likes. Go continue to hit that like button. Oh my God, look at all these comments. All right. Okay, here we go. Down to the bottom. My goodness. Okay. M Rider 777. I like it when I see you up in here, bud. All right. I want to be in dollars because I want to live overseas. I want my dollars to go long if I want to retire there. Yeah, actually, to be honest with you, that's where I think like a lot of people are misunderstanding why it is that dollars are so valuable is because you go anywhere around the world and dollars are wanted, right? The noise of the like the BRICS nations and trying to get out of the dollar and all that other stuff, it's very impactful when we hear it. And this is the thing that you really have to understand is that when you are given some information and it's hit with a bunch of emotions and feelings and stuff like that come to it and it's constantly reiterated to you, it gets set in stone, right? So it's just like pretty soon you just don't see it any other way. Understanding that there is a demand for dollars that exists outside of the United States that is so huge that there is no way that the Federal Reserve could even print up enough liabilities to cover all that debt. Like, I don't think there's a way that they could print up debt or print up. I don't believe that there is a way that the Federal Reserve could print up the dollars at a pace that is fast enough to cover all the debt if it was to come due right away, like immediately. I just don't believe it could happen. So most people who look at like the BRICS nations look at, oh, the dollar's failing, it's going on its way out. And to me, I'm thinking everything that the BRICS nation is doing is actually alleviating a problem that the Federal Reserve has of trying to supply the world with dollars. It's actually fixing a problem that the Federal Reserve is experiencing. Because they have to supply the world with dollars, and these guys are saying, hey, we'll supply the world with some transactions. And the Fed is like, yeah. Dang, finally, something out there that alleviates our damn problem of sending the United States into an unsustainable debt path by buying up their U.S. treasuries so that we can issue out all these liabilities to supply the world with these Federal Reserve notes and reserves. Like, I mean, to me, this is like a symbiotic relationship. I know a lot of people don't see it that way, but to me, that seems that way. It was just like, you guys are providing the world with transactions, and they're like, yeah, you're the BRICS nations. Providing the world with transactions, yeah. All right, hold on. Federal Reserve, what's your problem? It was like all these damn transactions. Everybody's got all this dollar-denominated debt that exists out there. They're just like so many business deals and contracts and transactions happening in dollars, and it was just like, that's your problem? And it was just like, why is that your problem? And why don't you just print up the money? It was like, oh, every time we print up the money, we're sending the United States here into an unsustainable debt path because we're buying up their U.S. Treasury debts. And, if we continue to do that, then, well, they're going to fail, And so, oh, I see. So you're trying to provide the world with enough dollars in order to do all the world transactions out there. And you're having a problem doing that because you're sending the United States into an unsustainable debt path by buying up their U.S. treasuries. That's your problem. If I got it right, trying to provide the world with the dollars, can't just print them up because you're sending the United States into an unsustainable debt path. And so your problem is trying to fill the world demand for transactions. And this is where the BRICS are stepping up saying, hey, we're doing transactions. We're doing transactions. Right? I mean, hey, transaction doer. You see what's happened here? Like, I don't know if anybody else sees it that way. I'm looking back. Like, this is how I see it because I'm looking back and I'm like, wait a minute, you guys have that problem? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, and you guys are essentially solving that problem. And they're like, yeah. Okay, nobody else sees it that way. Like, nobody else in the world sees it this way. All right. I mean, maybe just me. I don't know. But that's what I get for being an uneducated economist who sits there and just studies constantly into Federal Reserve document speeches and in literature. You know, I mean, maybe if like somebody else who didn't do that was teaching me economics, then I would know something else. But this is what I know from teaching myself, literally directly from the Federal Reserve's own words. Yeah. Let's go check out this comment or this super chat. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Ben Affleck. All right. Thank you for the $4.99, man. You guys are very supportive of the channel today, man. I really appreciate it. 625 people watching with 227 likes. Be sure and hit that like button. By hitting that like button, the YouTube algorithm will pick up the video, spread it around for more people to join in. Why would capitalism only work with overseas slave labor? It doesn't make sense to me. Well, I'm not sure if you're actually describing that accurately. I don't think it only works with okay. To understand, like, you know, the simplicity of capitalism is this. Like, if you want to look at it in the worst and you want to look at it in the best, right? There's two ways that I'm going to describe it, and you can make it more complicated by that, by adding slavery and you know, painful issues and all kinds of stuff that would come with it. But capitalism really comes down to two issues. You can look at it in a good and bad way, but it really essentially is the same no matter how you look at it. Okay. Let's look at it in the good light. Let's look at it in the good light in the first way, in the most simplest of its form, right? Because capitalism is going to provide the best of products at the most efficient price, at the quality that is the highest for the customer to use. Like, that's what capitalism will do. It will create the best product at the best price, the most efficient for the customer to have, right? That's what capitalism will do. Now, and that is to look at it in its greatest, lightest form, right? In the best light. Now, you can make it complicated, say, oh, no, capitalism creates all this greed and sons bullshit stuff. Okay, great, wonderful. Yep, sure does. All right. But that's what it does. It creates the best products for the customer at the most efficient way possible, right? Okay. Now, the other way to look at it in its worst possible form is it takes natural resources and turns it to garbage as fast as possible. That's what capitalism does. Those two things. Takes natural resources and turns it to garbage as fast as possible. So if you look at it in those two fashions, then you can start complicating it from there, making issues and politics and bullshit that goes with it that makes it really hard to understand. But capitalism is that two directions, and you can, and I don't care how you look at it any other way. Okay? So once you have understood it in this fashion, then you can understand that the capitalism is what's bringing you the best products. It's why people actually go out there and pursue the desire to bring products to market, is because they know that if they bring it to market, they're actually going to be benefited from that, because they're going to be able to have as much abundance that could possibly be out there by sharing this product with the world. And that is a beautiful thing to do. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And then to tell somebody, oh, dude, you did too much. You shouldn't have done that. We're going to have to punish you. Right? This doesn't work. It's just like, okay, yeah, wait a minute here. Let's hold up, because you're going to also have to add failure into this. And if you don't let them fail, you can't let them rise like that. And so here's the situation that we now have. Right? Oh, no, too big to fail. Capitalism is the problem. It was like, wait a minute now. You can't do that. Capitalism came in to fix the problem by allowing the failure, or denying the failure, denying capitalism. Capitalism is turning natural resources to garbage as fast as possible. If that was a natural thing that occurred, it needed to be turned to garbage, because that's what needed to happen with it, because it was not fit to exist. But if they're too big to fail, and we have the course of man who can come in and say, well, you know, I mean, let's set capitalism aside for a second and step in and interject here and, you know, save the world, you know, because, hey, we got to step away from the brink and all that other crap. You know, it's just like, and then like when things are starting to roll again, like, oh, well, let's blame capitalism again once more, because, you know, hell, what else are we going to do? It don't make sense to me. 635 people still watching. Thank you so much for joining in on tonight's live stream. I get value from services and materials that improve my community and society, not garbage. All right. Brian gonna clog up with microplastics. Oh, brain. I'm sorry, Brian. Brain gonna clog up with my microplastics. All right. Is it true that Mexico is currently the cheapest labor in the world? I don't know about that. Is it? I don't know. I mean, that doesn't seem right to me. It's probably, I would imagine that it's probably the most cheapest place to maybe manufacture, considering the distribution and energy supply and skilled labor out of comparatively to other nations that might be out there. So like if you incorporate like all the aspects of it, but like the individual laborer, I don't know if that's any cheaper or anything. Like I don't know about that. Let's see here. You left out second half. Eli. Oh, I guess you guys are talking. Assuming the risk by front-running hypothetical industry to even begin. Hey, all-nighter, what's happening? Aaron, please misspell F-U... Oh, yeah, for the algo. Yeah, please do. I try not to cuss. I do it every once in a while, but yeah, it's really not good for the algorithm. All right. If a giant asteroid... Oh, good Lord, what if? Okay, if a giant asteroid were headed towards Earth and the stock market would still find a reason to rally. Okay, yeah, walrus. Okay, that was pretty funny. Freeze-dried food is guaranteed when you can get great discounts if you keep an eye out. My Patriot. Yeah, well, yeah, storing up on food is a great one, but really, I think like storing food is an okay one. Like it's good in case of emergencies. But being able to can food is a skill that you have, like if you need to switch styles of living, right? You're like loading up and having a stockpile of canning supplies. That is something like even most canners probably don't think much of. I sell canning supplies like through the store that I work at. And you can see right towards the end of summer, man, it's just like it's on. Like we bring in pallets and pallets of canning supplies because we also have the river right here. So a lot of people are bringing in tuna and canning tuna and fish and stuff out of the river. So it's not just like the vegetables and stuff that they're growing out of the garden. They're actually canning, seafood and stuff. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's still like a huge item that a lot of people are buying. And I thought to myself, during COVID, this stuff was hard to get. It was very difficult. And I had already bought a case of lids and rings, so I just had them. And I'm thinking, wow, I bet you these things would go for a lot of money. And sure enough, there was a moment there in which that lids and rings were very expensive, and because people couldn't find them out there, and they were trying to figure out how it was that they were going to can the tuna and can all the stuff up, and there wasn't a decent supply of these lids and rings out there. So even just having them on hand, even if you don't do that much of it, just to have that in case the power goes out and the energy goes out and the currency collapses and all the other stuff that goes away, and you can take your lids and rings and jars and possibly, if you come across food, be able to preserve it for future. To me, that is like, I can't think of a skill that would be better than that to learn, that you can learn, and it doesn't even cost you anything to do it except for your time. It costs your time to learn it. And this is something that it would be fun that you could take in as something that would be fun. You go down to the hardware store, go down to the wherever, to the farm and feed, pick up a case of quart wide mouth lids and rings, go pick up a case of carrots, go home, watch YouTube videos on how to can carrots, right? And can the carrots. And then start doing it, right? And then do that like every weekend for a while. Go do the same thing with chicken. Go do the same thing with whatever you find out there. And just learn you don't have to find anything like massive. You don't have to find stuff on sale and like buy 100 pounds of it so that you can do this. Just learn to do it with a small amount. Just do one single batch and just see how it turns out. All right, 629 people. My goodness, so many people up in here. Okay, if giant asteroid, we already read that one. All right. There are no longer textile. What is that? says it's all moved to China. It's cheaper. There we go. All right, Yui, you have gotten real good at selecting titles for videos lately. The number of views are up. Yeah, Tom Flo, I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody who joins in on these live streams. I try to deliver some really good information that people can use, that they can take into their lives and say, okay, yes, I do see a lot of the economic forces that are happening out there, start to recognize like the 4 economic theories that I talk about. I can give it very descriptive titles and deliver the exact same information, and I guarantee you it will get a third of the views or a quarter of the views. I try to be very descriptive with the titles so that I could use it for my reference when I go back to like search for videos that I have done in the past. Having a very descriptive title helps to research what it is that I was talking about in the video. It doesn't work for views. Like if I'm going to spread this information, if I'm going to try and get the information out, then I have to use titles that are catchy and clickbaity and stuff like that. Otherwise, people really have a tendency to kind of scroll right on past them. When I deliver the information, I try to be very consistent and honest and true with everything that it is that I'm talking about out there. And if you go back and you look through my videos, you'd probably find that that is pretty well accurate, that you would find a lot of the videos that I have talked about in the past is very consistent with what it is that I am talking about today, especially with things like elevated interest rates and the neutral interest rate being elevated on an inflation expectation. Like that is something I have just constantly reiterated, you know? And I understand like I'm a contrarian on most stuff too. Like I like to push against the grain on just about everything out there. But when I find that the media is a propagandized machine that delivers information that they want you to hear about and internalize and think about, I think about the power pair, like the damn, you know, what it comes down to is they create a power situation in which that gets manipulated. And it drives me absolutely bananas when I see people who fall into it and then become part of that power. And they deliver it and they feed into it. And like it's delivered through this message of like, you know, a reoccurring thought, you know, the masks. Like the mask is a good one. You know how many people wanted to call cops because somebody in the store wasn't wearing a mask or something? I want to call the cops. Now nobody cares. Now nobody cares if you wear a mask or not. You know, and stuff like that. That like a power generation thing, you know, that is built up from it. And that's what I see out of the mainstream media. And I see it as like a propagandized, like power delivery machine. And when I think about some of the things that they talk about on this power delivery machine, I think like, man, you know, everything that they talk about is literally stuff that they want you to know about. If you know about BRICS, it's because they want you to know about it. Right? You think about it. I'm talking about average inflation targeting. Have you ever heard anybody talk about flexible average inflation targeting ever? Why wouldn't they want you to know about it? Why isn't that information delivered? Why isn't it that somebody else on YouTube would talk about and internalize and strategize flexible average inflation targeting? I know there's people out there who could do it a hell of a lot better than I can. Why am I the only one? So when I think about propagandized information about a 2% target, and I think, wow, this stuff works well. Like they got this propagandized delivery of information, power delivery dialed in. They dialed it in. They got, they like, I am so convinced that they have so well orchestrated the communication that literally they have there is no chance in the world that people will ever figure it out. I mean, those who are here on the Uneducated Economist, I mean, we talk about it all the time, but like even, you know, if there was even 10,000 of us who figured it out, that ain't enough. Like we need literally millions of people to figure out what it is that how they're really doing this as far as their monetary policy, delivering it through a forward guidance delivery of information to keep an elevated interest rate and then get the elevated inflation expectation to raise the neutral interest rate. Like I don't see it any other way. That's the way it's going down, you know? All right. 2% is a scam. Totally agree. they were talking about on the flexible price flexing on eggs today, and that's why I hate the local news. Alright. Jack Stewart, I made the name up myself while eating pizza for dinner. All-nighter, plus people are intellectually lazy, so 2% is all they want to hear and think of. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's where the difficult part is because really knowing that a lot of what it is that is communicated about monetary policy is literally forgotten within days, almost completely gone within a month. By 30 days, there's almost no recollection of it. In 60 days, in 6 months, there was absolutely no internalizing whatsoever, have no clue about the monetary policy, anything. Can't even be like reinformed about it. They would be like, what? Nope, never heard about it. You know? That's how bad monetary policy is for the people. That's the majority of the people too. There's like no understanding of monetary policy out there. And so when I think about a lot of times when I talk about monetary policy and I talk about the Federal Reserve, how many times people say, well, the government, the government, the government. And I'm like, I'm not talking about the government. I'm not talking anything about the government. I'm not talking about the Treasury. I'm not talking about the cabinet. I'm not talking about fiscal policies. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm talking about the Federal Reserve and their banking system with the monetary policy. And that is a private banking organization. It doesn't have anything to do with the government. And so when people are like, oh, dude, you got to include all this politics into monetary policy. And I'm like, no, I don't, because they don't, right? I mean, they have this monetary policy that is dialed back from 20 years ago that seems to be very well playing out in what it is that they described it and what's okay. Sorry about that, guys. Damn Wi-Fi. So I just turned it off. But I even look at it like, even like if you're going to include politics into it, like to me, Trump is actually a great evidence of how it is that they play like professional wrestling. You know how like professional wrestlers want to tear each other's heads off in the ring, but like in the background, like, behind stage, they're all buddies. Trump and Powell are like, they're so bros, right? And even way back, like I said it way back during his first administration, like Trump was like Powell's best friend. He was like, he couldn't have done a better job delivering the most beautiful propaganda to the mainstream media when he was screaming, there's no inflation, the Fed should be printing money. That was one of the most beautiful moments of friendship that I could ever have possibly witnessed. Like, I mean, it was touching. So what happened really is that the Federal Reserve found themselves that they couldn't raise interest rates any higher than 2.5%. And they were like, crap, this is it, man. Things are going hell. People are not very happy with this. We are in a bad state that if we cannot get the Fed funds rate any higher. Again, this is during Trump's first administration. Right. So Trump was just like, oh, okay, what's your problem? It was just like, well, we're trying to raise these interest rates and we're having a difficult time. And it was just like, oh, well, hold on one second here. I'll raise the real interest rates. Give me that microphone. Yo, there's no inflation. The Fed should be printing money. They should go negative with interest rates. Germany's doing a great thing by going negative, right? This is what Trump was saying. So what ended up happening is that if you lower the inflation expectation, you will raise the real interest rates. Let me repeat that again. If you lower the inflation expectation, you will raise the real interest rates. The Federal Reserve couldn't raise rates any further. They were stuck. They were saying, hey, that's it, man. We're stuck. We can't go any higher. And it was just like, oh, well, we can continue to raise the real interest rates. Give me the microphone. Haha, propaganda machine. Flip on the power. Let's go. Let's give this. I'm good at it. There's no inflation. The Fed should be printing money. The rich people in the room know what I'm talking about. That's what Trump delivered for information. Boom, drop the mic, totally worked, right? So then inflation expectation falls to the floor and real interest rates begin to rise. That was a total gift to the Federal Reserve at the time. It worked. It totally worked. Nobody saw it that way. I was the only one. I mean, of course, I was saying it back then, but nobody was listening then either. But yeah, no, I'm just kidding. There were people listening. There was a lot of people who heard that, and I repeated it many times. But even today, it's still working again for them, right? I mean, the threat of tariffs is raising the inflation expectation, no doubt about about it. People have totally moved themselves into a position as if those tariffs have already taken place. I don't know how many times I have described the credible threat theory just as that. Delivering information so that the market will react in a way as if that thing has already happened, so that when it does take place, it will not be a shock and awe event. People will absorb it as if it had already occurred. There will be no, it will just be a simple transition. Right? I said that many times. Think about how many people have positioned themselves getting ready for a major tariff. Lots of people, elevated interest or elevated prices on things. People are buying ahead of time. It was all kinds of like chaotic news all over the place. It was obvious that it was raising the inflation expectation. Now, this is something that's very interesting on how it helps the Federal Reserve, because people were like, no, this is hurting the Federal Reserve. It's not. Absolutely not. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is the thing. This is why the Federal Reserve and the propagandized machine being conducted with Donald Trump is working so well. It's because the elevated inflation expectation is absolute benefit to the Federal Reserve, because what it is doing is it's raising the neutral interest rate. This is the rate that is neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. When the Federal Reserve is at neutral, they are neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. They are at neutral. Right now, they are above neutral. This is how they restrict the economy, is by raising the Fed funds rate above neutral. If the inflation expectation is very well pronounced and elevated into the economy, then what you will find is the inflation expectation will begin to rise, and that will pull the neutral interest rate ever higher, making it ever closer to the Fed funds rate, making the economy less restricted and in a way stimulative. Right? It's not stimulating, it's less restrictive. But to understand, the higher the inflation expectation, the higher the neutral interest rate, the less restriction on the economy there is. People keep wondering why there's a resilient economy every time we have this bad economic understanding of what's going in the future with inflation expectation. It's an actual benefit to the economy, and people are looking at this and don't get it. They don't see it this way. And I'm thinking to myself, this is exactly how the Federal Reserve described what they wanted to do 5-6 years ago. Those of us who study the monetary policy, those of us who have learned the credible threat theory that I have developed over the years, we get it. We see it plain as day, just like that. The way I described it, they do not see it any other way. I mean, I guess some people might see it some other way, but they're incorporating at least the theory into their understanding of what it is that they're looking at. Right? They may not necessarily take it in entirely like I have, but they recognize it. They send me articles saying, dude, check this out, man. You're totally right. And I'm like, I know, right? I mean, because this is what's happening. All the rest of the people don't have a clue. They want to talk about how it's all screwed up and that everybody doesn't know what's going on. And I'm thinking, no. The Federal Reserve described exactly how they were going to create this pain and suffering on the people. They said it back in August of 2020 in a speech. Jerome Powell said that the inflation was going to be painful on households. However, if they didn't do it, it would be a downfall to monetary policy. He said that they were going to create pain. All right? I did videos. The Fed wants you in pain and suffering. They wanted the elevated inflation expectation. If you are not feeling the pain and suffering, you would not feel the pain of an inflation expectation, then none of the shit would work. Sorry, don't mean to cuss. None of this stuff would work. You have to feel the pain and suffering, or else it wouldn't be an inflation expectation. If you didn't have the inflation expectation, then you wouldn't have the neutral interest rate rising ever closer to the Fed funds rate. By moving ever closer to the Fed funds rate, now the Federal Reserve can just literally sit on their hands, do nothing, and have the economy being at neutral, where they are not accommodating nor restricting it, which is exactly where they want to be. Elevated inflation expectation is what's getting them there. They don't have to do anything. It's coming to them. That's the point. They've been sitting on their hands. It's like, well, we don't think we're going to adjust interest rates. Oh, no, we can't do that. When the neutral interest rate's on its way to us, why would we? All right. I hope you guys are having fun. It looks like you are. There's 655 of you watching, all hitting that like button. I see 319 likes. Thank you so much for doing that. Continue to hit that like button, and we'll get more people to join in on this algorithm grabbing video today. Ben Affleck, thank you so much for the $1.99. Are tariffs part of the dollar mega squeeze? Thanks again. To be honest, I think tariffs are exactly for what it is that I am describing. I think it's for elevating the inflation expectation. I think it's for creating the credible threat. I think it's for using as a manipulative power. Like, think about it, man. If I really I'm thinking, okay, like if I'm gangster, I just go out there and do it. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, oh, hey, by the way, yesterday we got tariffs upon you and all that stuff that you just sent. Yeah, that's getting 25%. Right? I mean, like, that's literally how I do it. It was just like, no, there's no warning. No, let's go screw yourself. There ain't no warning. You're getting 25% right now. Day one. Literally day one. I don't even warn you. I'm just going to do it. This today. Okay? But that's not what's happening. It's just all this, like, blah, blah, blah. Maybe flexibility, 20%. In fact, reciprocal, blah, blah, blah. Like, what in the world? That's not the way you do this. Oh, come on now. Right? That's not the way you do this, right? I mean, maybe it's the way he does it because that's the way he plays the game, but that's not the way, like, I mean, if I was to do business, it was just like, no, there. That's it. That's the way you get it. Now, if we want to, pussyfoot around and screw around and, play grab ass on this shit. I mean, I don't know what the hell it is that he thinks he's doing out there other than creating the credible threat, which is totally working for raising the inflation expectation and the neutral interest rate, which is all what they wanted. And I've been saying for years. Like, I mean, I just look back and it was just like, I don't know how they're going to raise the inflation expectation, guys. I don't know. They're going to make something up. I don't know. Keep the supply chain broken somehow. And tariff. And I'm like, oh, no shit. Wow. You guys, this is, oh, good job, guys. I don't know. I didn't think that was going to go down like that, but that's the way it went down. All right. All right. Nathan Bennett, $5. Thank you so much. If you want to talk about this in Roman lingo, whelp, it is time to debase the coinage again. Yeah. And, well, you think about it, like, even in Roman times, like, Cantillon actually describes it happening where, the Romans were, like, in a position in which that they were running out of currency, and so they were using, like, steel coins, right? And so, people were like, well, steel coins are pretty easy to make, and they were like, okay, well, the steel coins that they were making were so cheap that they were actually using the coins to, like, make other stuff, right? And they're like, wait a minute, this isn't working. We need the coins for commerce, right? Stop making stuff out of the coins, out of these steel coins. And so they, like, tainted him, right? They, like, I think it was like vinegar or something. I forget exactly what it was. He says in the essay, I think it was vinegar. Right, so they taint all these steel coins, so they can't be used for anything other than coins, right? And so that worked all right for the people to stop, like, basically to stop using the coins to make stuff, right? So they're like, okay, so now the coins are staying in circulation, the people aren't using it for other stuff. But then other nations were like, yeah, we can make those coins too. And so they started bringing in their own coins and spending it in there and basically buying the stuff, like diluting the currency even more by bringing in outside steel coins that resembled that of the Roman ones at the time. And so, like, this ended up being, like, towards the end of it. But, it all comes down to transactions. That's what it really is, right? That's why the barter system is so difficult and why gold is so awesome, because it's recognizable, it's divisible, it's all the stuff that you would ever want for a currency. The only problem with it is that it's limited. And see, this is where I think, like, a lot of people end up misunderstanding the gold standard, is that once you have a limited currency, the person who is the most industrious out of the group, like, you have a village, one guy makes carrots, one guy fishes for stuff, the other guy is, like, pounding iron or whatever, and you have, like, this commerce going amongst them. Well, one of them is going to be more industrious than the rest of them, meaning that they can pull in more money. Well, if you start pulling in more money, you're going to start denying the rest of the village the ability to do transactions because you are taking all the gold. It's the same scenario that happens throughout the world when it comes to manufacturing and being an industrious nation. If you are the most industrious, you will hoard all the gold. The United States has done it. When they did it, they said, hey, we are not going to relinquish this back out there to the rest of the world, and we severed ourselves from the gold standard. So understanding that the gold standard is meant to have an equilibrium moment, that once you have become the most industrious person out there and you have taken all the gold, it's not meant or designed, it's just the way it is. It's a natural consequence of using a limited currency like gold. What ends up happening is that the rest of the people get very pissed off and hungry, and then you have to relinquish that gold back out there to the rest of the world and become poor. You suffer in poverty and misery because there's no greater suffering than to diminish your standard of living. People love raising their standard of living. Shit, they can go that way all day long. They love that part. The moment that they have to go the other way, they suffer and cry and complain about how horrible life is anytime they ever have to step backwards. All right? And that's exactly what ends up happening when you redistribute the gold back out there to the rest of the world. And this is the problem with the gold standard. And if we were to do it here in the United States, what we would do is we would import foreign stuff and export all our gold, and we would suffer in pain and misery within months. Like, I don't know if it was months, but I couldn't tell you the exact timeline, but it probably wouldn't take very long because we are some like very needy people for stuff and consuming the foreign producing items out there. Well, I'm starting to slur my words a little bit. How long have we been going? Almost an hour and a half. Oh my goodness, man. With 648 people watching, this is incredible. You guys are really loading up tonight. Thank you so much for being here and watching The Uneducated Economist and hanging out and having the conversation with the comment section, because you guys are always so awesome. To contribute to supporting The Uneducated Economist by hitting that like button and commenting. Anytime you comment, or even hitting the like down button, like the thumbs down button, it's still an engagement. So if you share the video, sharing the video is ultimate. Like, that's the best way to do it. Algorithm loves shared video. It wants to share it if you're sharing it. So sharing the video, hitting that thumbs up button, and making a comment. This is the way you can help out The Uneducated Economist. And certainly those super chats are always definitely appreciated by you guys who like to support The Uneducated Economist with super chats. Dominique, money was never seen so abundant in Rome. What was the result? All this money plugged in the rooms, into luxury, and into all sorts of crimes to pay for it. Well, eventually what ended up happening is that they couldn't fight any more wars. They couldn't bring any more new money in, and then the foreign producing stopped coming in, and everybody fell into, and then Rome fell, right? Because they weren't producing for themselves like they were. Well, I mean, they produced, right? They produced stuff. Like, everybody produces stuff. What it was is that they didn't produce enough of their own stuff to maintain the standard of living that they were at. They were living off of other people's production, just like the United States is. Right? And this is not uncommon throughout history. Cantillon describes it. He describes it quite well. He says this is what happens. That of an industrious nation will rise in wealth due to the fact that they are producing and acquiring money. Once you have acquired the money, the people there will go like, oh, wow, we got new money. Let's buy new stuff. They buy new stuff. Eventually, that new stuff gets expensive and foreign production comes in, and their domestic manufacturing says goodbye. It's like, it's the same thing. It's over. It's like it's going to repeat itself. There's no way to stop it. The tariffs and all this other stuff is like literally the symptoms of the problem. It's evidence that it's taken place. Right? It's not the cause. It's not the anything. It's literally a symptom and a result of the situation. It's gonna, like, that's just how it works. Back in the day, a king would like basically make a law that said, okay, like, listen, we have risen as an industrious nation. We have all this gold, and the problem is that you all live a nice life, nice, beautiful lifestyle. And if you're going to continue to live that lifestyle, we are going to end up exporting all this gold out of our kingdom, and we are all going to suffer in poverty and misery. So I'm basically going to cut the hands off of anybody who tries to take gold out of our nation. Okay? Well, that's a pretty heavy threat, right? To have your hands cut off if you try to take gold out of the nation is the only way he could think of to keep the gold in the nation, because everybody was living this extravagant lifestyle, buying foreign production. And he was like, oh no, man, that's it. Like, if we don't have new money coming in, all this money is going to be leaving. So no more exporting of this gold. Well, I don't want to go any deeper, but there's one particular group who figured out that there is a profit to be made when it's illegal to transport gold over the border. All right. Let's see here. Capitalism just makes it go faster. Unethical capitalism gets messy. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a way of looking at it. You are describing mercantilism, which Adam Smith disproved. Well, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. The economic force and everything that I have described, I don't just look at on a macroeconomic scale. These economic forces go all the way down to your individual self. And that's the reason why I continue to use them. Right? There's 4 economic theories that I have taken into consideration because these 4 economic theories seem to pull themselves up time and time and time and time and time again when I read articles and I listen to people's discussions. Right? Those 4 economic theories is the Cantillon effect, like I've been describing tonight. Right? The bullwhip effect, which is when you have misunderstandings of inventory levels amongst the supply chains and oversupply to undersupply to oversupply begins to take place within the markets. Gresham's law, which is where bad money chases out good money. So if you could just simply think, man, if you had a gold coin and a dollar, would you really be giving up the gold coin or would you be giving up the dollars first? Most likely you'd be giving up the dollars and you would be putting the gold coin in your pocket and taking it home, and the dollars would be in circulation because dollars are bad currency and gold is good currency. And Gresham's law, which is like from the 1500s, says that if you always have, or if you have a bad currency that's being used, good currency is not going to take it over. It's going to get hoarded away. Right? So Gresham's law is a very important one to internalize. And then Triffin's dilemma. And Triffin's dilemma is the one that we have been discussing earlier, where how is it that you get, as the custodian of the world reserve currency, how do you get that currency out there to the world? The easiest way is to be in deficit trade, meaning that if you're going to be a custodian of the world reserve currency, you're going to have to run trade deficits. And that's why this whole tariff thing is just a joke. Not a joke. It's serious. It's very serious. What I'm getting at is that it's not being communicated in a way that is, it's propagandized information so that they can elevate the inflation expectation. Right? Like they know there's no way that manufacturing's returning. It's not happening. Not in any kind of meaningful way. I don't care. Like, think about all the crap that they did during, like, what was the whole idea that Biden was going to do to bring back manufacturing? What happened to all that stuff that they talked about? Right? I mean, I know he had a bunch of failed policies, but then really, I think about it, they all fail. Like, what policies work to bring in manufacturing back to the United States? None. Right? I mean, they can bring manufacturing back, but not meaningfully. Not like it's going to be some kind of significant change to the way that we bring new money into this country. It doesn't work like that. It's not going to happen. All right. Okay, let me cruise down here to the bottom, guys. All right. Unemployment is already at record lows in the U.S. Even if manufacturing came back, who's going to work those jobs? Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I don't even like. I mean, I'm not even thinking about manufacturing coming back to the United States in any kind of meaningful way. I'm just not thinking that way, right? And like you said, unemployment is historically low. Like, if historically low and inflation is running moderately above 2%, there is absolutely no reason to find any reason at all for interest rates to come down, right? There's absolutely no reason at all for that. Now, an idea of bringing manufacturing back to the United States would have to mean like we are not trying to get our dollars out of the United States. And to think that is very like illogical, because what's going to end up happening? Here's the thing, like this stuff is so complicated. Okay. What's going to end up happening is that if you do not get the dollars out of the United States, like literally get it out of the United States into the hands of foreign holders, then what's going to happen is that foreign holders or foreign issuers of dollar-denominated debt. These are debts that are due in dollars that have nothing to do with the United States or banks or government, nothing. Like they are completely outside of the United States, but they are debts that are due in dollars. When those debts come due, if they cannot find the dollars to pay them, the dollar will begin to strengthen. If the dollar strengthens, the domestic manufacturers of of things that the foreigners produce, Jesus, if the dollar strengthens, the domestic manufacturers here in the United States will suffer as the foreign consumers of our products will not be able to buy as much. As the dollar strengthens, our products, our exports to foreign nations become more expensive. So if you're trying to increase manufacturing in the United States, you got to be able to find buyers of your product beyond that of just the United States. You got to have foreign people buying your production. And so when you have industries like, say, soy and logging, and I don't know, there's probably a bunch of agricultural businesses out there that depend on foreign purchases of their product, and all of a sudden you have the dollar strengthening, their product becomes more expensive for them. Now you have production here in the United States falling. That's a very tricky tightrope to walk, right? So if you can't get the dollars out of the United States and the dollar begins to strengthen, you're going to find your exports getting more expensive for the world to buy, and your manufacturing is going to slow down. That's not what they want, right? And since the whole idea is the United States doesn't produce stuff, we produce a consumer, getting our dollars out of the United States is far more important than trying to get production out of the United States. And getting our dollars out of the United States, the easiest way is to buy foreign production. Or have them literally tariff us. Right? Just take it. These people get all upset about oh man, they're, look at what they're throwing this money at. And I'm like, yeah, but they're trying to fill the sluices anyway. And it's, not that I'm saying it's a good thing that they're throwing that money at those particular projects or whatever you want to call them, those particular things. I wouldn't even call them a project, right? You throw it at a particular, group or whatever, and they just go and blast that money and just make a waste of it. And the government looks at that, and the banking system looks at that, and everybody who's up there in power looks at that and says, well, they did their job, right? Because they're trying to fill the sluices. Just get that money out there. Just fill it into wherever they can. And that's the whole point of buying production, is that you can buy foreign produced stuff and get that money out there to the world. I know nobody sees it this way. I know, Trump has some kind of theory about bringing, all this other stuff back, and I'm looking at that and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, brother. That's that doesn't seem like what's going on. What seems like going on is you're all trying to raise that neutral interest rate to make it ever less restrictive on the Fed funds rate. That's what I see happening. Alrighty, guys, how long are we gonna stay out here for? I didn't realize we were gonna be out here this late. All right. 401k, easiest way to accumulate $1 million. Yeah, we'll see. I got a 401k, but it started a little late. I contribute. My boss, I got my boss contributing as much as they're going to contribute, but I put a good chunk into it every single month, but not, my whole paycheck or anything. But I have other places that I put money to as well. But we'll see what happens with that 401k. It's just another part of the whole thing. It's like I almost kind of have a thought about 401k because people talk about how it's going to go away and it's going to disappear or they'll confiscate it from you or something like that. And I'd be like, oh man, that would be a bummer. But I kind of look at it almost like the 401k. I almost look at like Social Security. Right? It's just if it's there, cool. If it's not, I'd be a little bit more pissed about the 401k, but the Social Security, it's just I already kind of wrote that one off already. And in the 401k, I almost think about it in the same fashion that if my 401k failed, or at least if it was confiscated for some reason or another, then other people would probably have the same situation happen. So then we would all be essentially equalized in that way. And then my gold and silver would probably just be off the charts, valuable at that point because nobody else has any kind of retirement, right? So I kind of almost look at it in that fashion. Even if they were to take it, it was just well, that's going to cause this other asset of mine to just go through the roof. So that's kind of like a hedge, whatever. See, I don't worry about nothing. I don't worry about any anything. I don't worry about anything. All those people who are like, oh, dude, you got to think about like the New World Order and Davos and Economic Forum and eating bugs and being happy and owning nothing. And you got to think about all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I already did all that thinking a long time ago. Yeah, like I don't think about stuff like that at all. Like I am not worried about it. People were like, dude, you got to be concerned about the New World Order. I was like, dude, I used to really be concerned about the New World Order. Like I was a nut job. Right? I don't think like that anymore. I just like it deteriorates your life into nothingness. It's not worthy of it. It's just I mean, it's not that the information is not worthy of you suffering in pain and misery for it, right? It's one of those power things, right? One of those, what do they call it? Like power pendulums? Is that what it's called from the transurfing reality transurfings? Are these speeches archived somewhere? The speeches? Yeah, you just type in Federal Reserve speech. Just type in Federal Reserve speech and yeah, they're all documented there. Now, in order to find the ones that I have collected, you're going to have to follow the Uneducated Economist. In fact, I'm getting to the point now that if you are wanting to learn this, you're going to have to pay for it, right? Because there's just no other way that I can do it and make it available in a way that just like, because I've tried. I've done so many videos. I've done like, I don't know how many YouTube videos breaking down the speeches over and over and over and over again. Like I've broke them all down many times for free on these videos. You can go and collect all the speeches, right? Now, I have also broke them down in a members only, right? Member only videos. $1. You're going to have to pay for it. $1 a month, right? $1 a month gets you access to the member only videos. They are full of us breaking down these Federal Reserve speeches in a way that you can internalize, a way that you can have a conversation about. Like we understand and talk about this in a way that is like working class knowledge of how to use this information. Like all these people out there who are like bankers and financial advisors and all these other people, they know how to take your money and say like, hey man, I'm going to put it towards these, particular equities and these, whatever securities and la 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 la, and then we'll like, kind of walk away from it all and then come back here in 6 months and see how it goes, right? There's like all those people, I don't know where the hell that they learn economics, how it is that they learn to look at economics, how it is that they figure this stuff out. I have no idea, because what it is that I'm seeing doesn't look anything like that, like anything that these people talk about. I don't know how many times I've like people who ask me about economics, they go to talk about it and I say, hey, can you just, maybe real quick, could you explain what it is that the Federal Reserve is shooting for with their 2% or with their inflation targeting? Can you explain the average inflation targeting or moderately above 2% or any of that stuff? And then people are like, they look at me like they have like this glossed over look. And I'm like, if you can't, if that's a very simple thing, flexible average inflation targeting and that moderately above 2%, like that's not complicated. That's not really hard. And I've talked to financial advisors who had no clue what I was talking about. And I'm like, really? All right. Well, I mean, each their own. Like everybody's got to learn their own economy, And I mean, mine doesn't look anything like anybody else's out there. And the stuff that I started, like, because you got to think, I started off as a conspiracy theorist. And when I started diving into the Federal Reserve, I was going into essentially tear them apart. When I figured out the way to tear them apart, essentially in the Federal Reserve, I come out here and nobody catches on. The credible threat theory is literally a theory to disassemble the Federal Reserve. I mean, all these people are out there, we're going to sue the Fed, we're going to do this to the Fed, and the Fed, and write books about the Fed, and, audit the Fed, and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that ain't going to work. If you want the Federal Reserve, if you want to end the Federal Reserve, you have to disassemble it from the inside out. And the way you do that is by understanding the monetary policy and then understanding that they are using their words, not their action, in order to conduct this monetary policy. And by learning how it is that they are using these words to conduct the monetary policy, You can disassemble the Federal Reserve because it wouldn't work. Maybe it would work. Maybe they would find another way, but they would not be able to do it this way. And that's the point, all right? So the only way to do it is to join the channel. Member-only channel is $1 a month, like literally $12 a year. It's the cheapest membership in the world. I'm waiting for my UE shirt like a kid on Christmas. Well, thank you, Larry. I appreciate you buying a shirt, man. I have a guy who's wanting to do the merchandise for the channel, and I haven't really talked to him, but I should. But I thought the Teespring was okay. All right, cut the live stream short and stream for member only. I really should. I mean, I absolutely love doing the member only live streams. They are long and they are boring. But I love them. They are by far my favorite videos to do. And it's because we're really learning at this point. We're breaking down monetary policy speeches directly from the Federal Reserve, the FOMC, the members of the FOMC, not somebody who's talking about it. These are people who are talking about their own opinions about the way that they are going to vote. There's 12 voting members of the FOMC, 5 alternates, and 2 advisors. This FOMC, they are more in charge of everybody's lives in the entire world than any 20 people that I could ever possibly think of. And yet nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows what they talk about. I mean, a handful of us do who pay attention, right? I mean, some of us recognize the name Goolsby. I mean, some of us, recognize, Michelle Bowman and get excited about what she has to say. But hardly anybody knows anything about the Federal Reserve. Like nothing, like zero, not a thing, And a lot of people want to blame Jerome Powell, and I'm thinking, Jerome Powell, why, man? That didn't do nothing, right? Except for talk about monetary policy on behalf of the FOMC, and he had a vote. So I guess he did do that. He did vote, right? All right, let's break this stuff down some more. Are we done here? What time is it? It is. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, it's getting late. It's like 9:30, 9:17 right now. Getting on to 9:30. Oh my gosh. My wife is probably thinking I'm nuts. But there's so many of you out here. We got 534 people watching right now. Like, how do I give up the live stream with 412 people having hit the like button? I mean, you guys keep me out here, All right. Let's cruise up here. What is that, Stefan? In high school in 2000s, my high school government teacher didn't know what the European Union was. Yeah, and see, that's just the problem. You're not going to learn it in school. There's no way. You're not going to learn this in any kind of educational class. There's no class that you can go to learn this stuff. That's the problem, all right? See, like, people are like, dude, where can I get some books and learn the stuff that you're talking about? You can't. I don't know. Maybe Ben Bernanke might cover some of the stuff. Like, because, he was the first speech that kind of kicked it off back in 2001, deflation and how to prevent it from ever occurring here, where he was describing quantitative easing and essentially the things that they were going to do during the great financial crisis, literally 6 years before it happened, But, other than that, I can't think of a single person out there who is going to break it down the way I have. They might hit little points of it. Like, you might find where, a particular economist may have keyed in on, one particular aspect or another, but I can't find anybody out there who has put together an entire economic theory based on the monetary policy of the Federal Reserve, keeping it a secret, which is not really a secret. It is very well communicated, but people have been gaslit into believing that it's something that it's not. So in this sense, it is somewhat of a secret because, again, people are believing that it's something that it's not, and they're just not fixing that belief. So once you have internalized this and recognize it, well, then you see out there people who are talking about 2% target and stuff like that. They are strategizing on ways that they are completely delusional about. They are like, oh man, the Federal Reserve, once they get to their 2% target, I'm like, well, already you failed. You already failed. Like, if you think that the Fed is going for a 2% target, you failed. Because they're not. They're going for moderately above 2% for some time. They have very well communicated that. Just look at the consensus statement. Look at the 12 different speeches that I have where they reiterate it, you know? I mean, it's just like, to me, like, I see 99% of the people having missed it because they believe that there's a 2% target that the Federal Reserve is trying to shoot for. And it's like a ridiculous thing to believe. They are shooting for moderately above 2%, pulling the neutral interest rate ever higher because they want the Fed funds rate at neutral. Whether they have to lower it to neutral or if neutral finds them, either way, that's the goal. They don't have to move if the neutral interest rate is rising on an elevated inflation expectation. I'm going to keep saying that. I'm going to say that because I've been saying that exact thing for like 2 years, 3 years now. Ever since they started raising rates, I said this is what they're going to end up doing, is that they're trying to pull the neutral interest rate up. And the whole reason is that if they can get the neutral interest rate elevated, they can drop the Fed funds rate far enough below neutral before hitting the lower bound of zero, and that gap, that spread between the two, is going to be enough to stimulate the economy. You think about it right now, think about what's kind of leading up to this. This is what's really, like, you want to be in the conspiracy theory mindset. This is mine right now. So, and it's pretty mellow, really. So right now you have a lot of people who are pulling back on their spending. That means they're saving. If they're not spending, they're saving. And I know you got a lot of credit card debt and all this other stuff that's going on, but there's a lot of people who are beginning to save and they're pulling back on their spending. Now you think about it, like, what are they doing this for? Because they're worried about recessionary pressures that are coming or whatever is going to come. And, recession happens to be one of them. So they're getting prepared for this particular idea of it. So now let's say, for example, a bunch of people start pulling back on their spending and they're saving a bunch of money, right? Now, I mean, a bunch of money can be relative, but they're saving some money, right? And at the same time, you have this neutral interest rate that is rising because you got this elevated inflation expectation. Well, now let's suppose, right, because I hate doing what ifs, but let's suppose, because I'm a conspiracy theorist, let's suppose that we have a savings that is increased, we have an elevated inflation expectation which raised the neutral interest rate, and we run into a recessionary pressure, right? Recessionary scenario. Now the Federal Reserve drops interest rates to zero, and you have a savings that is backing that up, right? Just saying. I mean, right now, what's happening, right? We got people backing up on their purchases, and they're starting to save. And we got the elevated inflation expectation, and we got all this stuff happening, like the stuff that I am describing. People are saying, oh, man, the Fed don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, okay, why don't we set that one aside for a minute? Let's talk about what they are doing, all right? Jan, not with it. I'm sorry, no way, man. I'm sorry I'm boring you. All right, let's see here. Late night with UE special. Yeah, thanks for being here, guys. We got 550 people still joining in on tonight's live stream. Thank you so much for being here. Japan had decades long managed recession. It's wild. This is where QE is a concept come from. They pioneered a lot of the stuff. They started using paper over the post recession. Yeah, that's true. Like Japan, but Japan also had, like, I mean, although they have, like, an economy that can be, like, reflected upon and looked at as far as, like, things like the lost decade and the slowdown in inflationary growth, like, and inflationary issues. Like, they had no inflation in Japan for, like, the longest time, right? But again, I think a lot of that had to do with demographic issues and like aging populations and just not being, like, another one is not being a world reserve currency. Like, there's even though they are a world reserve currency in a sense that they do world reserve transactions kind of things, but they're not like the world reserve currency like the United States dollar is. Like, they do world transactions, so it's a bit different kind of an economy in a lot of ways. And, like, bit different is, I think, a little understatement. It's a lot different in economy, but I think it could be reflected upon for certain things. I'm getting tired, guys. I don't know how much longer I can hang out. All right, the Fed knows what it's doing. We used to say Greenspan is God, then he retired. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Greenspan has a very interesting career. He was a huge gold bug back in the day. To find that the way he moved into the Federal Reserve and became like the chairman of the Federal Reserve and conducted monetary policy, or at least expressed the FOMC's communication about the monetary policy the way he did. He was a very confusing dude. Like, he would not explain anything thoroughly or in a way that was understandable. Like, he did that on purpose. And this was actually a style of the Federal Reserve. This was like something that they did on purpose. Like, they did not want to communicate monetary policy. In fact, they wanted to keep it hidden and hit people with the shock and awe event because they thought it was more powerful to do that. It was later that they realized that their words were more powerful than their actions, and they figured out ways that they could use their words, how it is that they could deliver information, how it is that they deliver this information into many different channels, knowing that not everybody is going to be able to acquire this information by just the traditional means of delivery, because some people just really don't care what the Fed does. So they actually had to force feed this information into the people in such a way that they would actually be able to acquire it, and then it would impact the economy in the way that they wanted them to, or they wanted it to. This was a very long, hard development. Like, they had to build and piece this thing together over time. Like, they didn't know how they were going to do it, like, exactly. It was just like they just kept figuring out ways to deliver the information in a way that people would then internalize it and then use going into the future, much like, the dot plot, the statement after the meetings, the interviews that they give. Like, all these things were stuff that they never did back in Greenspan's day. So it's like, the way, like, to understand his style of being a chairman was unique to the way that the monetary policy was also being delivered, right? Because now they delivered in a way that is like, they want you to hear a lot of information to confuse the hell out of you, or to get you focused in on a particular direction. You know, it's like, it works so well. Like, once you see it, it's just like, oh my gosh. Sometimes it takes time to figure out what it is that the message it is that they're trying to deliver, but it usually doesn't take too long before you start seeing the pattern, like finding six different Fed officials with a headline, and in the headline is the word uncertainty, and all six of them from six different members of the Federal Reserve, and this is all happening within like a few days of each other. It's like, okay, do you think you guys are probably trying to send out a message of uncertainty? I mean, it's just like, you just had six officials with that word in the headlines in this, I mean, it's just like, whoever reads the article is going to feel that way, right? So, the title aligns with the media propaganda. Uncertainty. Yeah, it sure does. BLM built a new office here, and now they might lose their jobs. Greenspan was like Microsoft Excel. Jay Powell's like Chat GPT. OG versus new technology. No, I mean, I don't think so, really. Like, I mean, I like the analogy because I think it's kind of comical, but it's not really accurate, like, analogy. I honestly think that, like, like, if you wanted to use an analogy of like an old school technology that was like, I can't really think of anything like offhand that had a better technology back in the day than it does now. Like, most technology now is well advanced, but for, I don't know, just like, they built some things just like a little better back in the day. I mean, I can't say like, new cars, like, they're not even comparable, because like back in the day, like, they actually built cars that you could work on, and nowadays you can't really work on your vehicles without, specialized equipment and, all the other crap that goes along with it. So like, Jay Powell to me is like a lesser in technology than Greenspan. I think Greenspan was a much more technically advanced in monetary policy than Jerome Powell was. But the delivery of the information that Greenspan was doing was not well understood because he didn't want it to be understood. So like going back and saying, well, Greenspan said this, that, and the other thing is like, it's like nobody understood what the hell he was saying anyway. But then that was the way monetary policy was meant to be conducted, was in a confusing manner to keep you kind of in the dark, right? They didn't want you to understand and know what was happening. Powell delivers information much more like in an entertaining fashion. He was just like, hey, look at me, listen to the things I have to say. I have all this monetary policy I want to talk about. Listen, I got this stuff you want to hear. Right? And people listen very intently to the words that he uses, where Greenspan, people will listen and be like, what the hell was that? And like, did you get that? And like, that's the way people would talk about it. And then they'd sit there and try to decipher what it was that he was communicating. Powell doesn't do it like that at all. So to me, it's like completely different styles of banking. And I think honestly, Greenspan was probably a much more technically advanced person in the banking industry than Powell is, personally. All right. Oh, thanks, All Nighter, man. I really appreciate you putting those links up there. All right, okay. You can check it out if you want, Hyder. I'm stoked for the radishes. Okay, Simon, have you set up a retirement plan for your kids, or do they have plans for that in the future? Are you considering options of custodial IRA, the 529 college savings plans, and other investments? Wow, Stephen, that's a pretty good question. And I mean, to be honest with you, no, I haven't really set that kind of thing up for them. I do have allocated like money and saving stuff for them that I have, but it's not necessarily in any kind of traditional sense like that, Alrighty, guys. I know I keep saying it, but I just love being out here, especially when I have so many people who are following the channel tonight. We got 539 people watching right now, which makes it really hard to quit, especially when you guys keep hitting that like button. It just makes me want to stay out here and keep going. But it's getting late. All right, going to be interesting to see what this day of liberation does with the markets tomorrow. Yeah, and I'm guessing that I think a lot of people, I don't know, you might find some kind of knee-jerk reaction kind of thing, but I think most people are going to get up, drink a cup of coffee, and go to work just like they did the day before. I really don't see that there's going to be much of a change. Everybody's been prepared. Like, if you're going to make a move, you've already done it. Like, it's like, I mean, if you haven't been convinced by now, then, like, what's tomorrow going to do, right? So we might find, like, some knee-jerk kind of reaction stuff happening, but I don't think we're going to have, like, a big chaotic event because, I mean, it's just been so well communicated out there. I just don't see how it is that people would just not naturally just fall into position getting ready for it, or whatever they believe it is. Fair point and very well said, UE. Greenspan's like 60 minutes. J Powell's like TikTok. Yeah, and it really is. And and again, I mean, not to knock Powell or praise Greenspan. I think it was just the way that the monetary policy was being conducted at the time. One of them was trying to be conducted in secrecy during Greenspan's day because they didn't want people to know, and Powell wants everybody to know, right? So they were using hidden guidance and forward guidance. I don't know how else to describe it. They were like, keeping it quiet, and then now they like to tell people, Oh my God, UE is still on. Yeah, I know. Mike, I'm about ready to call it quits. I am. We got like 2 more minutes here. We're going to call it quits, and then I'm just going to finish it out for the 2-hour mark. How will we keep consuming when the consumers are stretched? They're going to force feed us money, UBI kind of thing. I don't know. Like, I don't know how they're going to do it. Yeah. I mean, that's why it's just like, I don't know the stimulus packages that they'll use. I don't know any of these stuff because they can't tell you. They can't write it down, and they can't like explain it to you what it is that they're going to do in certain economic crisis, because if they did, then you would price that in. You would incorporate that information into your strategies, because you'd be like, well, as soon as this happens, then the Fed will kick in, and then all this will happen, and so whatever. So they don't tell you about it. They literally just keep it quiet, And then when those situations happen, they got the unusual and exigent circumstance to deploy tools that they normally wouldn't be able to have. Much like the Bank Term Funding Program. All right. I set up 509 investment savings for my 3 years. For the last 2 years, it was 18% with Trump. With his plans, I don't want to check it. All right, Trump is doing like Powell. It's not the action itself, but the words. So people or nations act the way you want. Threats. Yeah. I mean, that's what a lot of it is, I think. I mean, I think it is. It's just like, I mean, I described it a long time ago that this was going to be something that they use, and here they are using it. And although it might be, a blend of actual events and the credible threat theories, but then really that's how the credible threat theories work, is they actually hit you with a little bit of the actuality of it. Like the special purpose vehicles and the buying of corporate debt, like they bought a little bit of corporate debt, but they hardly bought any. They funded the thing with hundreds of billions of dollars, and then they bought like, I don't know, I think like $100 million worth of corporate bonds. It was a lot, right? But it wasn't like some ungodly amount like everybody thought it was going to be, but they had to establish the credible threat. If they didn't do that and people didn't see it and they didn't believe it, then they wouldn't have fallen for it. So they actually have to see it. So a lot of that is actually doing, but just not to the scale in which that, people thought it was going to be. And that's how the credible threats are deployed. Alrighty, guys, we're gonna call it quits. Thank you so much for being here. Ad blockers left. Everyone just get premium. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate everything you do for the Uneducated Economist. You lots of likes on tonight's video with 466 thumbs up. I so appreciate everybody hitting that thumbs up button. That helps the YouTube algorithm know that this was a good video to share it with everybody. Sharing the video yourself, that is one of the best ways that you can get the YouTube algorithm to pick up this video, spread it around. And then always, thank you so much for all those super chats. You guys are always so generous with hitting me up with the super chats and joining in with the conversation, getting your questions answered, and being part of the YouTube team on the members only video. All the stuff that you do for the Uneducated Economist, especially with those Venmo and PayPal tips and the Cash App tips, helping to support the Uneducated Economist and getting to the Rebel Capitalist event. This is something that I'm a little short on funds this year to fly down to Florida to go hang out with George and the boys and everybody else down there at the Rebel Capitalist event. So if you want to help support the Uneducated Economist with a bit of a sponsorship up of the channel by sending the UE PayPal or Venmo or right here on Super Chats, sending me some cash to get me down to the Rebel Capitalist, get all-nighter down there as well, so that we can have a great time and come back and tell you about that. I don't know, maybe I can make it a reward somehow for funding the trip. But anyway, it feels weird to kind of e-beg like that, but I need the help to get to the Rebel Capitalist. All right, Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.